The Dallas Cowboys are in the market for a veteran running back. We'll tell you who they might target next.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. And joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can follow him on Twitter at McCoolBCB. And on today's show, we're answering your mailbag questions, including who was on the Cowboys Mount Rushmore, what is going to be the best positional battle to watch during training camp. But Landon, let's start with this first question from Jonathan. He wants to know what teams have loaded running back rooms with tradable/cuttable players that could be an upgrade in Dallas. I've got a list of names, but I wanted to ask you, is there any player or team that, kind of stands out to you?
I think, again, I would look at teams that drafted a running back highly, that has a high number of running backs. I always kind of look at Seattle because it feels like Seattle has always got like 4 decent to good running backs on their roster. So, I wouldn't say that I have a specific team in mind, situation in mind, but I think I would, if I was going to start looking at a list of these guys, it would start with, the teams that drafted running backs highly in this year's draft.
Yeah, and that's a great strategy. And the teams that I've written down, almost all of them drafted a running back. At some point, a lot of these teams drafted running backs in the 4th round, but a 4th round running back this year is probably the equivalent to a 3rd round running back last year. So keep that in mind. And I have to warn you, when I tell you these names, none of them are going to like jump off the page and make you feel great about the Cowboys running back room. But I do think a couple of these names could be upgrades, and that's all we're talking about here. So I'll run through the list. You tell me if any of these guys stand out. Antonio Gibson with the New England Patriots. He's blocked behind Ramondre Stevenson and Travion Henderson. Any interest there?
Yeah, I think we saw some good things from Gibson in limited situations, and I think he knows how to operate as part of a committee. So if that's what you're looking to do, is add just another talented piece to a committee, I think he would be someone that could be part of a good committee.
Yeah, and I think he's probably a guy that you bring in if Jaden Blue's not ready to handle the passing down stuff, because that's kind of where he's best at. He's not somebody that you want to give 15, 16 touches, I think, at this stage, but I do think he can have a valuable role on passing downs. Next one, Dameon Pierce. Now, this one feels a little bit like Rico Dowdle, where he's just gotten stuck in some bad situations. But the Texans have Joe Mixon, they signed Nick Chubb, and they traded a future 3rd round pick to select Woody Marks from USC, which still is a crazy pick. But Dameon Pierce is somebody who had 1,000 yards as a rookie in a gap scheme. They go to a wide zone scheme, not playing as well in that. On the last year of his contract, he feels very available right now.
Yeah, I think this is a name that Cowboys fans should get familiar with because for all the reasons that you just mentioned, and I think he is a spot where he fits better with what the Cowboys are planning on doing next year than obviously what Houston's planning on doing. And again, last year of his deal, he kind of checks all the boxes here. It's definitely a guy that I would say that if he brought him in would, kind of be the front runner to be the lead of the committee, maybe not a feature back necessarily, though. I think, there's a possibility that he, breaks out and gets into a good situation. He has that kind of talent, I think, to become a feature back in the right situation, but I don't think that would be the expectation. I think the expectation would be the lead, a nice little committee there.
Yeah, because he's not a guy that you want on all 3 downs. He's not really a pass catcher. He's somebody that you're running between the tackles in a gap scheme. And the idea is, hey, let's play him and Jaden Blue together. Okay, now I can see how that backfield would work. I don't think it would take a lot to go out and get him, but I do think he could give you Rico Dowdle-like production in this offense.
Yeah, just efficient on 1st and 2nd down, which I think is something that you're desperate for.
Yep. All right, a couple other names. Probably the biggest name on this list is Travis Etienne for the Jacksonville Jaguars. They drafted Tank Bigsby, I believe, in the 3rd round 2 years ago. They traded up for Byshal Tootin in the 4th round from Virginia Tech, who we know the Cowboys liked a little bit. Etienne on the final year of his deal. Now, I don't think Dallas would want to take on his full contract because I think it's like $10 million for this year, but maybe they split it with Jacksonville. He is a very talented runner. I wonder what he would look like in a gap scheme, but we know that he's been productive before.
Yeah, again, I think same sort of trajectory that you would think you have with Pierce, where at the very least you feel like he could come in and be a different type of player, probably more of in the blue, Jaden Blue kind of track of player, just because of his explosiveness and the pass catching ability. But I think same sort of thing where you bring him in. You feel like, okay, at the very least we have a nice floor for this committee of running backs, with the hope that maybe Etienne could actually, break out in a better situation and take the lead a little bit more.
All right, 2 more names that I want to mention. I'll give you a quick one. Zamir White for the Raiders, final year of his contract from Georgia. Between the tackles, they drafted Ashton Genty. They signed Alexander Madison. They signed Raheem Mostert. He's somebody that I think is very available, but not a sexy name. Blake Corum for the Los Angeles Rams. Now, the Rams drafted Corum in the 3rd round during the 2024 draft, but all the reports are that they're going to sign Kyron Williams to a contract extension, and they drafted Jarquez Hunter from your school, Auburn, I believe early in the 4th round, and they absolutely love him. Blake Corum, not probably somebody that's going to do a lot on special teams, not really a receiver. I wonder if you could get Blake Corum for like a 5th or 6th round pick after kind of a disappointing rookie season.
Yeah. Now, this is a guy that you don't feel like maybe is someone that could develop into a lead back on his own, but as part of a committee could be a very valuable piece, right? Because what he does between the tackles, maybe more than the other guys, would be extremely valuable. I just have questions about the other aspects of his game, but if you put him into a committee where you can balance that out a little bit, I think he could be a really nice piece and really elevate your run game a little bit.
Last one before we move on. The Tennessee Titans are rebuilding, right? And they have they have Tajay Spears, right? Who they drafted, I think it was the 3rd round during the 2023 draft. Very talented player who I think they want to get more work. Would you be interested in a Tony Pollard reunion? Let's say if Tennessee starts out 1-5 or 1-6, and maybe you could flip a late round pick for Tony Pollard.
I don't know. I mean, I really felt like he just doesn't have a lot of power at this point, and I just don't know how much he's got left. That's and I worry about injuries too at this point with him. I think probably so, but I would be wary about being excited because of his name. You know what I'm saying? Like I think I would tap the brakes on a lot of high expectations for Cowboys fans, because I think it would be a solid, I think it would be kind of in the realm with some of the other names that you mentioned, but I think Cowboys fans would feel there's more juice because they know that name a little bit, and they've forgotten that it's been, a couple of years since he's been here.
He's also going into year 7, and I know he didn't have a lot of touches early on in his career, so he might be okay. But year 7, that's when running backs, really, we've already seen their peak. And again, if you're renting him for a half a year, it's not that big of a deal. Who cares if it's a 5th or 6th round pick? Like, nobody's going to care if they do that. But I also wonder if you're looking at someone like Blake Corum, and if you can get Corum for the same price and you have more years left on the contract, maybe that's more appealing. I don't know. I thought that was an interesting name when I went and looked at our lads and looked at some of the depth charts across the NFL.
I think it's a name with more juice than actual production there, just because, like you said, advanced age and a lot of different other things.
All right, let's talk about the training camp battle that we are the most excited to watch this year. We'll tell you which one that is next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're about baseball under the lights, or maybe you want to watch some high stakes golf, or whatever you're excited to see, maybe some soccer action right now, FanDuel is the best way to make every game just a little bit more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it just a tiny bit more thrilling With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are out getting sunburned at the beach. I've been using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. And if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit fanduel.com to get started. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are answering your mailbag questions. And we got a really interesting one here about the camp battles. This one comes from Cage. He wants to know, what will be the most competitive position battle in training camp?
Well, there are a couple that came to mind immediately, I think, that, I'm excited to see. I think the first one on offense is, to me, tight end 2. Right. Like, I think, or really just the tight end position overall. Right. I just want to see how they're using them, how they're being deployed, and how they're rotating each one of these guys. And if there's distinct roles that they're being fit into, or is there like a true hierarchy where they're kind of battling it out to get deployed as tight end 1 and tight end 2 and tight end 3. So especially with some of these young guys that I think that are interesting players they gave a lot of money to, I just think that whole position group is going to be a bunch of competition. And it feels, even though Jake Ferguson, obviously has a clear step above the other guys in terms of skins on the wall and production, I think that there's going to be competition throughout that position, top to bottom. And I've got a defensive one too, once you give me one.
Well, and I wanted just to say, most of these position battles, like, I wanted to say defensive end, because you've got a lot of guys that are going to be competing for snaps, but ultimately these guys are all going to play a lot. Marshawn Nealon, Sam Williams, Dante Fowler, they're all going to get a bunch of snaps. So I'm not too concerned about how it plays out. But I will say on offense, wide receiver 4 or 5, whatever you want to call it, right? After Jalen Tolbert, George Pickens, and CeeDee Lamb, I'm really curious to see who grabs that spot. Is it Kevontae Turpin, who we have not talked about yet on this podcast? He was arrested over the weekend. It doesn't seem like it's going to impact his 2025 season. He might get suspended some in 2026, but whatever. You also have Jonathan Mingo, who they traded a 4th-round pick for. You've got Ryan Flournoy, Paris Campbell's fighting for a job, Jalen Cropper, Jalen Brooks, who's been on the roster. I think that's going to be one of the spots where we'll see in camp, like, who's being consistent day in and day out, who can kind of grab that last active wide receiver job.
Yeah, it's almost like you set kind of Turpin aside a little bit because not because of the arrest. I mean, that's, like you said, I think that honestly the most effect that will have, if there might be a suspension, is that if he gets put in the program, that's bad news. But speaking on this year, I think you kind of put Turpin to the side because he's going to be on the team, and that you're probably going to scheme him some touches, some opportunities. He's part of the offense. I think
he has a very specific role that we don't really need to worry about too much.
Yeah. So I think you kind of almost like set him aside from the competition of this group that you're talking about. But even then, I think you still see him competing for true kind of receiving opportunities, I guess, because he's definitely going to get the jet sweep, the swing out to the flats, the running back touches that he'll get, I think. So he's going to get all that stuff, but then there's going to be interesting competition, like you said. I think the other position that to me is going to be really interesting to see competition wise is the nickelback situation, right? Because we just I think part of it has been about, like, how are they going to solve it? How are they going to deploy these guys? But I also think that part of it is going to be them getting different guys in that spot and seeing what works best in the defenses that they want to run. I think Bland creates a floor for you for week 1. If you can figure out, adequate guys on the outside, that at the very least you've got Deron Bland who can play in the nickel. But I think you're going to try and experiment a little bit to see if you can find somebody. What if Mukuamu was actually just really a natural nickel once given an opportunity, especially in more zone coverage? Maybe his length is a real asset, and he's not having to chase guys, all the way across the field if he's just dropping into like hook zones. So maybe he can do the job in a really great way. And then you give Bland the opportunity to stay outside. And I think that may make you more flexible, but So I think that there's going to be a healthy dose of competition to see if they can improve that situation. Not that Bland isn't good enough at nickel, but you would like to see him play on the outside. And if you have a player who can excel at that kind of very specific role in nickel, you put him out there and let Bland excel at the outside.
Yeah, that's a fantastic one. I'll give you one more. The linebacker spot is very intriguing to me. Now, I don't want to step on Thursday's toes because we're going to talk about the linebackers during that episode. But I do wonder, like we've heard Kenneth Murray and Jack Sanborn have been the starting linebackers during OTAs and mini camps. Does Maris Leofau get into the battle if he has a strong camp? Does Damone Clark play a factor in here at all? And what does it look like when DeMarvion Overshown comes back? Now, Overshown's not going to practice in training camp. He's not going to play the first, 2 months of the season, at least probably the first 3 months. But who is that linebacker that's staying on the field with Overshown once he makes it back? It's just a very interesting position because the Cowboys signed a linebacker, traded for a linebacker this offseason. They're both expected to start. How do the holdovers with Clark and Leofau, how do they factor in? We'll see.
It's crazy because, you feel like they did some things to the position, but you just really don't have a good grasp on where the floor is for this group, right? Because you don't really know what Murray is going to be. You have, I think Sanborn is the guy that you probably feel like you have the best grasp on him coming in and being a functional NFL linebacker at the very least.
He played like 300 snaps last year, which is
right. And I think with Murray, it's like this could be a real boom or bust situation for the Cowboys. Leofau is going into year 2 after being drafted by a different administration. I just really don't know what to expect from him. Overshown's got the injury, so we think he's a great player on the rise.
James has been dealing with an injury as well.
That's right. James is the guy that they drafted that's been dealing with an injury. There's just a lot of unknown. And I think a lot of times when we talk about unknown, we talk about the ceiling of things. I think this whole position, because there isn't like something to hold on to, it's hard to kind of grasp where the floor is at this position.
Yeah. So they have some really interesting battles. Running back is another one.
We've talked about it a lot.
Yeah, we talk about the running back battle a lot. That's probably the one that fans are going to be paying the most attention to. But tight end 2, wide receiver 4, not including Turpin, defensive end a little bit, and then linebacker, nickelback. Those are the ones that we are going to be keeping an eye on once the Cowboys start practices here later this month. I can't believe we're already into July. It's absolutely crazy. All right, let's do some fun Cowboys history. Who would be on the Cowboys Mount Rushmore if there was such a thing? We'll debate that more next. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Scouting Show. As training camps get closer and moves are being made, hosts Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, this final question here comes from Jake. He wants to know, who would you put on your all-time Dallas Cowboys Mount Rushmore?
All right. Well, first of all, let's get some qualifiers out of the way.
Yeah.
Are we including coaches? And if we aren't, then let's do this. And if we are,
let's not do that, because I think if we were to do that, I think Tom Landry and I think Jimmy Johnson both go on there. Let's just call these 4 players.
Okay. So just so we're clear, Tom Landry and Jimmy Johnson would be on this, but we're not including them. So, all right, we're just doing players. I think we obviously have to start with the most obvious name. To me, Roger Staubach is a no-brainer, obviously. Yes. So Roger Staubach is the first name. For me, I think the next name is Troy Aikman. And I know that you've obviously suggested one of the all-times as well. If you want to give him your selection.
Let's start with the quarterbacks, because I do agree. Staubach to me is the first name. He was the best quarterback of the 70s. The Cowboys' record with Staubach was absolutely incredible. He took them to 4 Super Bowls, I believe.
I think it's 5, isn't it?
A lot of Super Bowls.
Yeah, a lot of Super Bowls.
The numbers across the board are absolutely incredible. So he's an easy one. Troy Aikman has 3 Super Bowl wins. He's an easy one as well. Then it gets a little bit tricky. Do you put
It
like someone
does.
like Emmitt Smith, who is the NFL's all-time leading rusher, on the list?
I honestly, for me, I mean, man, it's tough because to me, if we're really doing this, I think Michael Irvin deserves to be in this before Emmitt Smith. Even though Emmitt Smith is, the all-time leading rusher, I understand that. To me, like looking back retrospectively at that 90s team, it was Michael Irvin who was the engine of that team. And I think, I even debated putting him in over Troy Aikman. I think, like, to me, as we kind of get more time away from that situation, it felt like that it was Irvin who truly was kind of the inspirational heart of that group. So I would make that debate. I think Emmett's obviously also in that debate as well. I think we have to nod to other guys that are older. You mentioned Bob Lilly when we had this discussion. I think he's certainly got to be in the discussion.
I think Bob Lilly to me is a lock. He made the Pro Bowl 11 times. He was a 7-time All-Pro defensive tackle. And I mean, by all accounts, he was the best defensive lineman in the league for the entire 60s. Not only was he on the all-decade team for the 60s, but he was also on the all-decade team for the 70s, which shows you like how dominant he was for so long. I just think when you're listing like best defensive players of all time in Cowboy history, he's number one. And I'm looking at it right now from Pro Football Reference. From 1964 to 1969, he made first team All Pro every single year. He got multiple MVP votes throughout the course of his year, not for defensive MVP, but for the actual NFL MVP. To me, he's a lock.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, and listen, they call him Mr. Cowboy for a reason. So I certainly think that he should be a lock, maybe even above any one of the triplets. Just because wasn't he the first pick overall for the Cowboys, if I'm not mistaken, as well, like the very first draft pick. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, again, I think he should definitely be on the list next to Staubach. And now we're fighting the final two spots. One of the three triplets. I think we can all make the arguments for one of those guys.
Well, hold on, there's only four, right? There's only four on Mount Rushmore, right? So
no, I'm saying
Aikman,
what I say. Those two guys. One of the three triplets. So that's the third one, right?
Who would you put of the three triplets if you had to pick between those three?
I think for me, honestly, I know we said Aikman because we were listing it, but I would vacillate between Aikman and Irvin, probably.
Okay, that's fine. I'm good if you want to say Michael Irvin. That's totally fine with me.
Well, if we say, let's say Irvin, and then we'll argue on the fourth one because there's going to be some debate here.
Can I give you some names to consider?
Yeah.
Larry Allen might be the best offensive lineman, not only in the Cowboy history, but one of the top 5 in NFL history. And the fact that he made a Pro Bowl at 4 different offensive line positions, and he was so dominant for basically 15 years, I think he at least has to be considered.
I thought you were going to argue with me when I brought his name up.
Of course not.
No, to me, I think, look, I mean, if you think about what the Cowboys are considered to be, like, and positionally, right? Like, they've had great quarterbacks. Other teams have had great quarterbacks, but it's the offensive line, that feels like has been kind of historically really great for the Cowboys. So to me, I think Larry Allen is the epitome of great offensive lineman. And one of the arguments of this whole thing, I think, has to be, where are you kind of in the pantheon of positional all time, what in your position? I think Larry Allen is one of the few guys in this list that has a legitimate argument for being one of the best players of his position of all time. I think as great as Staubach and Bob Lilly have, there have been other incredible all-time great quarterbacks and incredible all-time great defensive tackles. I don't know that there's ever been a guard or whatever, you want to put him at right tackle too, as good as Larry Allen when he was at his best.
Can I give you another one? What about Randy White? 7-time first team All-Pro selection, Super Bowl MVP. I mean, he was just absolutely dominant for like a 5-year stretch where he was the best defensive player in the league. I have a hard time not including him on the list, but I'm open for criticism here as well.
Absolutely. I mean, if you had asked me at 7 years old who was on this list, without a doubt, I'm putting the Manster on there because he was one of my favorite players when I was growing up. Listen, I'm going to throw out one name because he's a personal favorite of mine. I don't know if he actually deserves with this group, but I think that Darren Woodson is one of the greatest Cowboys. I mean, he's the all-time leading tackler. He was a heart and soul part of the second and third Super Bowl that they won. And I think that he's just was a big part of what the only things that were good in anything post Super Bowls for the Cowboys. Darren Woodson is one of the best all-time Cowboys as well.
A couple other names that I thought about. Tony Dorsett obviously deserves some mention. If you want to put like Jason Witten on the list because he holds every Cowboys tight end record.
Mel Renfro, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Well. I thought about Bob Hayes as well because of what he did, in the 60s and 70s, more early 70s, but a lot of good names. So I think we're going to go with Staubach. Let's go with both Aikman and Irvin, and then let's put Bob Lilly. But then it's hard, man. It's hard to leave out Larry Allen. That's the only thing.
Let's drop Michael Irvin and put in Larry Allen because I think Mike Irvin would probably push Larry up on stage anyway. So that works.
Well, I think the thing we need to figure out is that Mount Rushmore needs another head. If we had one more head on there, I would feel great about this whole thing.
Marcus is teasing me because I forgot that Mount Rushmore only has 4 heads instead of 5 before we were talking about this. So
that's all right.
I'm going to admit it at least.
All right. That is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. Go download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. Make sure you guys tune in for Thursday's show when we discuss the Cowboys linebackers, and we'll see you guys then.